Our speaker today is one of my favorite people who comes to visit during the semester, Aerin Christensen. She is a graduate of BYU, where she was a political science major, is that true? And after that, she worked at a think tank in Utah. And after that, she went to BYU Law School, where she was the president of the Federalist Society. That's true. And now she is a law clerk at the Court of Appeals in Utah.
Nailed it.
Did that whole thing right.
That's it.
But some other interesting things about her is that she is one of the best group organizers that I have seen come through BYU. And there are many people who do sort of group activities at BYU. I feel like that is a distinguished thing. And one of my most memorable episodes of my class to this day is a class where she led a coup against her enemies within the class, which I feel like was a great achievement. So
I also feel like it was
she also is.
It's on my resume.
Yeah. And she also is a great advocate of going to law school and how to succeed in law school. So we're very happy that you could come sit with us tonight.
Great intro. The lights are dimming. This is so intense. Okay. Thank you guys so much for having me. As I was driving here, my husband was like, I hope you have something helpful to say. And I was like, geez, I do too, actually, now that you mention that. I am happy to be here. I love coming and talking with BYU students. But like, the benefit of this is really only as far as it serves you guys. So if you have questions or like don't care about something I'm saying or have any commentary along the way, feel free to raise your hands and jump in. I'm happy to redirect or to clarify some things. I've been refining this presentation, but happy to refine it further. So please jump in, happy to have participation. Okay, so like Professor Davis said, I graduated from BYU. I majored in PoliSci, which I can't remember. I should have asked you this, Davis, before, but raise your hand if you're a PoliSci. Okay. What are the other majors in this room? Shout it out.
Pre-business, pre-law.
Love it. Okay. Are you the lonely orphan? Okay.
Maybe.
That's okay. That's great. It's a great major. Didn't mean to single you out at all. Okay. I just wasn't sure. I retitled my presentation Life After PoliSci because some people think that there is none. So I am living one right here. And want to talk a little bit about it in any way that is helpful to you guys. So, Professor Davis graciously introduced me, but is there anything that he didn't say? I don't think so. You did a pretty good job. Graduated from BYU in 2020. I took a year and a half off and worked as a lobbyist here in Utah at a think tank kind of in that world, and then went to law school and graduated from there, and am now clerking on the Utah Court of Appeals. And then after that, I'll work at a firm in Salt Lake City, is the plan right now, or maybe do more clerkships, TBD. I was born and raised in Utah. I went to BYU twice, just can't get enough BYU. I live in Salt Lake City now, so now I feel like I'm like on enemy territory, and I feel stressed all the time about like if people are gonna jump out of the bushes with like U shirts on. I don't know, especially this week, it's feeling very tense. I don't know. I'm also married to a double BYU grad. He has an MBA and his undergrad from BYU, and we have one super adorable baby who is a year and a half old. So I had her my 2L summer of law school. So I had a newborn baby to 1-year-old my final year of law school. This is our most recent picture as a family, which is, I guess, fortunately or unfortunately, of Halloween. She was Draco Malfoy because she has bright blonde hair that we very fortuitously slicked back. It was spot on. I should have made a slide just of photos from Halloween, but just trust me, it was really good. Okay, so that's me. So I'm going to go a little chronologically. So we'll talk first about the policy think tank world really briefly, and then talk about law school. Happy to spend time in either of those areas answering questions, whatever's most helpful for you guys. But first, I don't feel like anybody really talked to me when I was in undergrad until I went to law school really about like what considerations you should be taking into account when you're thinking about like your future career, your life plans. So as we're talking about this, like maybe you guys have already all thought through this and you're ahead of me, but think about like Geography. Do you need to be in Utah? Do you need to go back to Colorado? Do you want to leave the country? Those are all questions that are going to play into your career choices. Geography is a big deal. Obviously, what you like doing. What's something that you're going to enjoy in your day-to-day life? What kind of work is it that you're going to not dread going into the office to do? Do you like working with people? Do you like one-on-one interactions? Do you like reading and writing and wish everyone would leave you alone and never talk to you again? Those are all great questions to consider when you're thinking about your career path and what you're going to love doing for the rest of your life. Related, but not always the same thing, what are you good at? Some people like doing things they're not good at and are good at things that they don't like doing. So those things might be different for you, and I think that's also an important consideration. You might just have some natural talent or some skills you've built over the years that would be worth capitalizing on and specializing in. Additionally, like, what is your family situation? Like, do you need to be, maybe that relates to geography, do you need to be somewhere for family reasons? Do you need to have specific timing? All sorts of questions could relate to your family, your spouse, your future spouse, your siblings. I don't know, do you need to take care of your parents in their old age? Like, do you need to make millions of dollars so that you can support your grandparents? I don't know, could impact your decisions. And I think you should also be thinking about, like, how can you do good? I had a last bullet on here that used to say, like, what does God want you to do? But I took it off because I was feeling cheesy about that, and I also have, like, mixed feelings about, like, does God want you to do anything, or does he want you to exercise your agency? I don't know. That's a whole philosophical discussion we don't need to get into right now. But I think it's worth considering. Do you feel like there's, like, a path, a calling? Do you feel like there's something that you should be doing, or some way that you can do a lot of good? Maybe that just means working for a big law firm and making millions of dollars and donating a bunch of it to a really great cause. Or maybe it means moving to a third world country to help support communities in need. That could be totally different things, but I think it's worth considering. Okay, so be thinking about that as we talk about this. Maybe you guys have already thought about this. Maybe you already know you're going to be a foreign service officer and, like, that's your life plan and you're set. That's great. But to the extent that plans might change or you might still be considering this, I think these are all worthwhile questions. Okay, so first let's talk about the think tank world, the policy world. If you are a poli-sci major because you like policy and politics and making change, then the policy think tank world might just be, like, the best kept secret in this major, in this school maybe. My mom always jokes because I don't think it was BYU, but there's some college that I was, like, considering going to. But if you major in poli-sci or in other similar degrees, they make you take a class that's basically like, just so you know, you can't get a job with this degree, which is a sad class, and I also don't think that's true. So this is my pitch as to why that's not true, and those people are inaccurately representing the skill set that you come out of this major and this degree with. So, but I think that's also, it's kind of a not very well known kind of area and career path. So let's talk about what that looks like. You get to do a lot of research. That means working with a lot of really cool people to come up with cool ideas to pitch to legislatures or executive branches. This could be on a federal level, it could be on a state level, lots of research. You also get to advocate for really cool things. That kind of overlaps with maybe some of your interests in law school, right? If you're really passionate about advocating for a specific cause, or if you're just, like, really good at advocating for things generally, that might direct you to one of these two paths. So unlike in actual, like, advocating in court, the policy world kind of requires you to advocate in the court of public opinion and to sway people that way. So I think that's a really cool chance. You get to do lots of writing, lots of speaking, talking to people, different interest groups, trying to bring people together on important issues. And ultimately, like, the goal is to influence the law in different spheres, and I think that's really cool. You get a chance to actually make a difference in issues that you care about. So for example, when I was working at this think tank, the think tank I worked at is, like, a libertarian-leaning organization, which sounds very dramatic and might sound like more dramatic than it really was. I'm kind of going to think of another word to explain that. But I was doing their local government issues, which is something I'm really passionate about. So local government and land use. Anybody out there who's, like, really big into eminent domain? Yeah, I know, very exciting. So I got to do that, which is not something that like a lot of people care about, but I think it's really important, and I got to talk to people all across Utah in different local government positions and the state legislature about something that I think is really cool and really important. So that could be you, except for presumably not for eminent domain, because statistically I'm probably the only person in this room that really cares about that. But if I'm not, let's talk. So you might be thinking like, but where will I go? What will I do? Is there really any actual possibility for me to do this work? And the answer is yes. This is my eat it haters slide. Because if people are telling you like, that's just not a real job, like people don't do that. These are all organizations just in Utah that are policy advocacy organizations on all over the political spectrum, working on different issues. But that are all like hiring, that take interns, that have real jobs that pay you money to work on cool issues. And that's just in Utah. And that's not even barring the state senate. Like these are just private groups, right? The other side of the policy world is like you could also work for a government entity, right? Like senators' offices, local government entities, the state legislature, like they are also hiring for positions all the time. So like those are real jobs. I just don't know. I just got the sense in this major that people were like, oh, those jobs, they don't exist. Like that's for your high school hobbies if you care about those things. And that's just not true. Like people are actually doing this work. Maybe I'm just an idiot and I'm the only person that was like under that impression, but it definitely made an impact on me. And so I got to this point where I was graduating and I was like, what am I gonna do? And I had to kind of discover this whole world. So these, again, are just in Utah. There are so many organizations like this across the country, I'm sure in whatever state or whatever place you're interested in working in, and probably on whatever issue you're interested in advocating for. So yeah, these jobs are real and they're really cool. Before we move on from the think tank policy world discussion, does anybody have any questions about that side of it? About getting those jobs, working them, what it looks like, what you might do? Yes?
I've talked to people that think tanks like AEI in BC, and they told me that it's essentially impossible now to get a full-time career in a think tank unless you have a graduate degree. Is that not the case in state level?
I just don't think that's accurate. Probably for like national think tanks, I could see that being potentially more true. But like, yeah, that is so interesting to hear feedback like that, because I was just thinking when I was putting together a slide, like I have a friend, my friend she worked at the state senate, and then for like a year, and then lateral over to Abundance Institute and is now their chief of staff for this like new think tank that just popped up. I have another friend who he just has an undergrad degree and he is now chief of staff at a senator's office. Like, and so you can move your way up in those positions, but like I graduated in 2020, so it was not that long ago, and got a job at a think tank with my undergrad degree. So I would say no, and I think, yeah, probably at like national big think tanks, maybe that's true, and maybe some isolated instances like they require you to have a graduate degree, obviously going to be more competitive, but I don't think that that's true at all. I think that if you're interested and if you network, you absolutely can find a position with an undergrad degree. And that is my stance on that. If in 3 years you're like still job searching, you can come be like, you lied, and I will take it. I'll change my slide. Yes?
So if you're working in like a think tank or a lobbying group, and let's say like a state legislator like Utah that is only in session for a month, 2 months, maybe 3 months of a year, what does your workload look like when the legislator's out of session?
Yeah, so those 3 months that I can speak from my experience in Utah. Those 3 months that you're in session, obviously it's really intense. It's a high workload. You're trying to squeeze a lot into 3 months. But there's still lots to do in the off months. You are prepping legislation. In all those off months, you can still work with the legislators to try to craft legislation. They can open bill files long in advance of the legislative session. How many of you have done the Utah legislature internship in here? Okay, that's also a great opportunity, but if you have, you probably know more about this process than me, so I was about to defer to you. But there's lots to do before that. There's certainly an uptick in the legislative session, but you're also doing a lot of like public advocacy work where you're writing op-eds, you're trying to get published in local news outlets, and working on different publications and pieces to try to kind of advocate or prep for the legislative session, right? So you're kind of like creating this backlog, creating this cache of things that you could publish or put out in the legislative session. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's definitely a lighter workload, but it's still like a full-time job, and I think all of these ones at least employ people year-round. Yes.
This might sound weird, but what do you feel like your like actual activities were in the day? If you could give us like a day.
Yeah, so this was a lot of research and writing, at least in my experience. So, like I was talking about, we would do a lot of writing for news outlets. So I was also working on some longer term projects. We were putting together like pamphlets for local governments on issues that they run into. So a day in the life would be like, I would come in, I would do some reading and research probably on some of these issues. I would, in my most productive hours, work on writing some pieces, right? Maybe op-eds, maybe these long-term projects. And then I'd also be corresponding with legislators and other interest groups and people to talk about, to schedule calls or meetings to talk about the legislation we're trying to push. So I would say reading, writing, communicating, which I guess is kind of uninsightful because that could basically sum up probably every job in the universe, but hopefully that's enough details to get a better picture of what that would look like. Okay. So it's really fun, but I found myself like, my story is specific to an issue area because there was an issue that I wanted to do more about and felt like I couldn't do without a law degree. So that kind of led me to start looking into law school, what that might look like, and eventually led me to BYU Law. Largely because going into law school, I wanted to kind of return to this world afterwards. And so I knew that I was not going to be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I was looking for a law school that was not going to charge me hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if there's no more questions on the policy world think tank, we can always come back if something comes to your mind. Today I was at a lunch and I had a question like 10 minutes after we had left the topic of the question, and it's still burning in my mind today. I don't know the answer, but just know if in 10 minutes you have a question about this slide, we can always go back. Repentance is real, you know, we can backtrack. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about law school then. This is my expectation reality law school slide. I think we'll put them all in there at the same time. So I love law school. I think it is so fun. I am the biggest advocate of going to law school because I think it's a blast, which is unusual. If any of you have like talked to lawyers and asked them if you should go to law school, they probably say like, no, law school is the worst. It's the worst 3 years and I hate my life. Has anybody had that experience? Have you guys talked? Yeah, it's weird. And listen, like I took the bar, I'm a licensed attorney now, and they never made me raise my right hand and swear to like talk bad about law school for the rest of my life. Like I assumed that was like a step in the process. No, it wasn't. So I don't know what it is. Like they just hate their lives. I'm not sure what's going on there, TBD. But I loved law school. I had a great time. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of a vibe for if you think that you might also be a person who would love law school, because I think there are, while I would strongly encourage anybody interested to go to law school, I think there are bad reasons to go to law school, and I think there are good reasons to go to law school. So I think that is kind of elucidated by talking about what people think law school is. Before I get into this, I have to say, my biggest success story about advocating for law school and how I think it's the best thing ever is that I make law school look like so much fun that my dad left his career to start at BYU Law this year as like a 50-year-old man because it's just so much fun. And he was like, wow, I feel like I'm missing out. So now he's at the law school. How fun is that? Yeah, that's the cutest father-daughter story you've ever heard this week. This week, certainly. Okay, anyways. So if you look at law school and think like, I want to be rich, and that's why I'm going to law school, I think that is not a great reason to go to law school. First of all, because like, I don't know, probably go to business school. Some jobs are making a ton of money out of law school, but I just don't think you can bet on that because a lot of law school is highly dependent on your grades, and a lot of people come out of law school not making that much money, and it depends on the market, and if you end up like going to law school and then hating the practice of law, maybe you're just going to be in trouble if your goal was just, I just want to make a ton of money. So I don't think that's a great expectation. I also don't think law school is 100% automatically going to be worth what you pay for it, especially depending on where you go. we can talk more about that if you want. I think the calculation of whether or not to go to an Ivy League school is really, really interesting. Because if you know that you want to be a law school professor in your future, and that is like the only thing for you, and that's what you have to do, then probably it would be wise of you to try to go to a top 14 law school. Even then, it might not be worth it because you could probably get your way into academia without going to one of those schools. But I know a lot of people who went to really prestigious law schools and now are doing the same thing that I'm doing, but with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. So I think you got to be smart about like where you're going to law school and if it's going to be worth financially and opportunity cost-wise the trade-off that you're making. Because it's not just having a law degree, I don't think it's going to be 100% worth the price you pay for it. I'm specifically a big advocate for BYU law because they rank far and away above, as far as return on investment goes, that's going to be your best option by far. But like maybe BYU law is not for you, you want to get out of Provo, you have other reasons not to go to BYU law, that's fine too, but you need to like be thinking about that financial trade-off that you're making. There's also like this weird perception of law school that it's like this cutthroat nightmare, like people are ripping pages out of your notebook and like trying to sabotage you and like steal your lunch money. And that was also not my experience. I think maybe some law schools have more of a culture of that. I did not experience that at all. It also, like if you're like, I just want to be senator, so I got to get my law degree, I think that's also a bad reason to go to law school. So those are some expectations, maybe some perceptions people might have about law school. In my experience, like law school is really hard work. There's lots of really incredible, amazing, smart people that you meet throughout the process. There's lots of reading and writing. I think it's tons of fun. I think it's certainly humbling. There are, I don't know why I spelled that humbling. That's not right. That's probably not the only typo in here, so just ignore that. It's humbling. There are lots of times when you feel like an idiot. I always say, every time you look stupid, you get smarter. And I looked stupid a lot in law school. So that's a perk. Also might be a drawback, depending on how you approach that. And I think you will make lifelong friends and connections in law school. And maybe that's not, people might not see that as a big asset going into it, but that is a huge part of it. So yeah, I mean, I should have made a slide just like all about how much I love law school. I feel like I have not instilled that enough in you guys. Like it was so much fun. It was so exciting to be able to talk about tough issues, to be able to like reason through things, to learn to write really clearly, to really isolate those skills and drill down on them, and then to just have really incredible experiences. In my second year of law school, this is a picture from the Rex Ely Moot Court competition, where I was a finalist, and we got to argue in front of the Utah Supreme Court, which is cool, but even cooler, on other years, they'll have like circuit court judges, which are federal judges from courts of the Federal Court of Appeals, come and judge at BYU Law. If you go to other law schools, like they have so many cool connections, so many cool opportunities. You just learn so much, and it's such a rigorous academic experience, but at the same time, like there's so much support, there's so many resources, and it's just a great time. Like if I could be a full-time law school student forever, that would be sweet. So that's why instead I just live vicariously through other people. So in 3 years when my dad graduates, I'm gonna need somebody else to go to law school so I can live vicariously from them. So if anybody's interested in filling that spot, let me know. Okay, that's my take on law school. I'll pause there before we get to like some logistics and thoughts that I have on like the process, if anybody's interested in that. But do we have any questions so far? Yes.
This is kind of a two-part question, but my first is like, do you feel like PoliSci prepared you well for law school? And then like the second question is like, do you feel like it was a huge learning curve going from undergrad to law school?
I think PoliSci prepared me as well as any major could. I don't think I had like a leg up because I was a PoliSci major. In answer to your second part, I think law school is just so different. It's not so different, but it's different enough that like everybody coming from any major is going to be on a very steep learning curve. What was the second part of your question?
Yeah, that was the second part.
Steep learning curve? Yeah. I mean, it's like in the sense that it's like the things you're doing right now, all the same things apply. Like your study skills are going to transfer over. Your discipline going to transfer over. Your reading comprehension, writing, that's going to transfer over. But it's just like a different pace. It's a different structure. And so while all those skills will transfer and be helpful, it will be different enough that I think that like I personally would not say that any one major is going to like have a leg up in law school. One of my dear friends was a cello performance major in undergrad, and she was like very near the top of the class in our graduating class in law school. So like, I think it's a learning curve for everybody. Was there another question? Yes?
Do you feel like the culture at BYU Law School is the same as undergrad?
No.
Okay.
I feel like it is a little island in BYU. Like, BYU undergrad, I don't know, maybe you guys feel differently. In my experience, BYU undergrad was like, I had some friends in undergrad, but like, I didn't know everybody in all my classes. Like, we were like ships in the night passing. Every time I registered for a new class, there was a new group of people. I sort of had a sense of people in my major, I guess. But even then, like, it's just so big. At law school, it is so tight-knit, especially BYU Law, where it's pretty small class size. You know everybody. Like, you will know everybody that you graduate with unless you, like, try not to. And then it's just different, like, because it's so close, so tight-knit, like, the professor relationships are so, like, one-on-one. There's so much support and so many resources available to you as a law school student there. And I also think, like, people commonly say that, like, politically they think the culture feels different at BYU Law than at BYU undergrad, if that's important to you. But yeah, I do feel like it is different, and some law school students are very snooty about that, and they're like, get those undergrads out of here, we don't like them, and I like you guys, but I'm allowed to say that now because I graduated. Okay, sorry, I digress. Let's keep moving. I'm going too slow. I gotta speed up, keep moving through here. Let's talk about logistics. Before law school, you need to be thinking, if you're like, I want to go to law school, or even like, I think I want to go to law school, things to be thinking about. Your GPA will obviously matter a lot in going into law school. Your LSAT is the law school admissions test. That is a huge factor as well in the admissions process. And then you'll also need letters from professors. So like, you need to be thinking ahead here because like, you want to be working for a professor or in a close enough relationship with a professor that you can ask them for a letter of recommendation going into law school. So that's something to kind of keep tabs on as you're going through your undergrad. Don't be the person that gets to the end of undergrad and is like, wait, I want to go to law school, and then it's like, shoot, all my professors hate me. That would be bad. Also, like, don't be afraid to take a gap year. I know people frequently will go from undergrad straight into law school. Obviously I'm biased, this is what I did, but I think it can be immensely helpful to take a gap year, kind of experiment with some other things, get a job, work on a campaign, I don't know, do something even if it's short term and get a feel for what a job in the real world looks like, what working full time looks like or feels like if you haven't done that before. And if you really think you want to go to law school. If there's something else you're experimenting with, like, yeah, take a gap year, it's fine. I'll get to this on the next slide. Don't be afraid to take a gap year. Also be thinking about the cost of law school, how you're going to manage that, what your strategy is for affording paying for law school, etc. In law school, you're thinking about, are you ready to feel dumb? Like I said, clearly this is a theme. Are you in a place where you can go into a circumstance where you have no idea what you're doing and learn? Are you open to learning and growing in that way? Are you ready to work really hard? I will say, taking a gap year and working full time, I did not find law school to be more burdensome than working a full-time job. Some people like treat law school as if it is like you need to fall asleep at your desk, like you will live there. I did not find that to be the case. I think it's a healthier experience if you have a life outside. A lot of people find a lot of success if they can treat it like a 9-to-5 and just go home. But nonetheless, like you're still working very hard. You're engaged all day long. It's a lot of work. And again, like it's a lot of reading and a lot of writing. So like every time you have to sit down to write something, you're like, I hate my life, maybe we should reconsider. And then the other thing to think about is like, are you going to like life afterwards? Which I think this is what a lot of the attorneys are getting at when they say like law school sucks, it's the worst experience, don't do it. I think they are speaking from a place of they don't like their life right now. And I don't think that's very helpful because they are living one life when the options of post-law school lives are many and greatly varied. So like, you can obviously go to work at a law firm. That's like the most clear path that law schools will kind of like work you into. But you can also go back into public interest. You can work in the policy world. There are tons of think tanks and organizations and government offices looking to hire attorneys, and nonprofits for that matter. There's also kind of this concept called JD advantage, which is like you could go into a job that doesn't require a JD, but that is like a bonus to have one. And that could be, I mean, that could be a job in business. Like that could be almost anything. So you want to think about like, what do you want your life to look like after law school, but also don't feel so cabined into like this one path. And if you're not going to like billing big law hours 24/7, then you shouldn't go to law school. Okay, I'll do this slide really fast. I didn't have this slide on before, but I took this from the admissions officer, the dean of admissions at BYU Law. Every time I give this presentation, I email him and say, hey, just checking in. I'm going to promote BYU Law tonight. Anything I should say. And this was his advice from last year that I didn't even put up there last year, but he's the one who said, take a gap year if you're not sure. What I took off of this is, we will not penalize you for taking a gap year. So that's coming from BYU admissions office. That I do not think that is different at different law schools. I think generally law schools look at that as a really interesting perk to your resume, that you have a little more life experience than just an undergrad applicant. So I don't think you should be worried about getting your application penalized by taking a gap year. You can also always sit in on a class or talk to a current law student. I think it's, it's valuable to get a sense for like, am I going to enjoy this day to day? And there's lots of opportunities for you to kind of answer that question. Oh my gosh, this slide is a nightmare. Why are there periods on some of the bullet points and not on others? Oh, my boss would be mortified. Invest in an LSAT prep course. Those can be expensive. They can seem expensive, but my husband likes to joke that the best paying job that I will ever have is studying for the LSAT. Because I don't know, he did the math, I should have made a slide of it, but like I put so many hours into studying for the LSAT, right? But I got law school paid for me and a stipend to go to law school. So like the math works out to like lots of money an hour. And so even though it can seem like, ooh, $1,500 right now, like I don't know if I want to invest in that prep course. If you're serious about going to law school, you're going to make that money back, and it's going to be a huge asset if you can score higher on the LSAT. You don't have to have legal experience on your resume to apply to law school, but it might help you get a better sense for if you will enjoy life afterwards. So like we talked about, that might be helpful. Take advantage of the opportunity they give you to write a personal statement. I say take advantage of it like it's optional. I think it's required for most applications. So. But they're looking to get a better picture of who you are outside of just your numbers. Are you an interesting person? Are you a good person that's going to contribute to the community and make this a fun place for everyone to be at, and a quality institution where we can have rigorous and interesting debate and conversation? And then try to submit your application by a school's priority deadline. There's also a mysterious and after that, but I guess I decided the last piece of advice was not worth you guys having, so I don't even know what that was. Okay. Questions about where we're at here? Yes.
Did you apply anywhere besides the job?
So I did apply to several like T14 law schools, probably just like for my pride, because I was like, I could go to Harvard if I wanted to. But because of the scholarship I was on at BYU, I had to pull every other application before I even found out about them. So Professor Davis wrote me a very kind letter of recommendation specific to Chicago Law School, and unfortunately I'll never even know if I even got accepted because I had to pull them to accept a scholarship that BYU offered me. And for me, like, I applied to those schools, I don't know, just for fun, but there was never, like, I needed to be at BYU because my husband was in the MBA program at the time. Like, it would have been quite a puzzle to work our lives around going to a different law school. So yes, but no, I guess, if that answers your question. Yes?
What do you think helped you with the BYU scholarship? scholarship process?
So the minimum. So to get into those, okay, let me let me back up. I can answer your question in a very roundabout way. First, BYU, like I said, is going to be the best bang for your buck by far. 44%, as of this year, 44% of BYU law students are on 100%, at least 100% tuition scholarship, plus probably stipends on top of that, but at least 100%. 100% of BYU law students, excluding transfer students and LLM, which are international, have some type of scholarship. That's on top of the fact that BYU law is already like the cheapest law school tuition-wise, and they're just like paying for students to go there. That being said, because of that, it's like fairly competitive to get into that. The way to get into the consideration is through your GPA and your LSAT. Like they have minimum cutoffs that you have to hit. Depending on the scholarship, but and you can talk more with the admissions office about this specifically if you have more questions that I can't answer, but you are going to have a high enough LSAT score to be considered for those. So like that was bare minimum, you got to like get through the door on that front, GPA and LSAT. And then on top of that, like I think it was interesting to them that I had a gap year of like things that I cared about and could write an interesting personal statement about. And then they do like interview processes, which I think I did well enough in. But you can obviously work to prepare for those because people are gonna, at least at BYU Law, they have like a pretty rigorous interview process for some of their scholarships. Other questions? Yeah.
To be able to go and sit in a class, what's the most seamless way
Yeah. Well, BYU is really good at that. They're, if you just email their admissions office, which you could probably just Google BYU Law admissions, you could, yeah, I can't tell you what the email is, but it's out there. It's pretty easy to find. If not, you could just call the number for BYU Law School, and someone will direct you to the right place. But if you just send an email to that, or I think there's even a button on their website. I should have just found this. He's nodding like he knows what he's talking about.
If you go to like the law school page and
Or like admissions, just like learning about the school, there's like a 10 class thing. It's pretty.
Okay, yeah, and I think you just click it, and they literally have it set up so you can go do it. So it's super seamless. It is not out of the blue. They're prepared. They love to have students come do that. Okay, yeah.
With your experience with the BYU scholarship, is that how all law scholarships are? If you get a scholarship, you have to withdraw all your applications too.
Oh, it's pretty case specific. It kind of depends, and it's not even like all BYU law scholarships. It's just some of them that are like weird early admission ones. I think a fair amount of law schools have like early admissions programs where they would expect you to pull applications, but I can't speak with too much authority on that because I think it's going to differ widely. So, sorry, that's not helpful. Okay. Okay. We're going to do a little activity now because if you've gotten anything from this, it's that you want to kind of get a vibe for like, are you going to enjoy law school? So I have devised my own little litmus test for if you're going to enjoy law school. I want to be clear, I have no authority to devise this litmus test, so if you don't enjoy this, you might still enjoy law school. And if you do enjoy this, you might still hate law school. So there's basically no guarantees or warranties attached to this activity. But there you go, with my disclaimers out of the way, we're going to do a hypothetical, which is a frequent term in law school, an endearing term, a hypothetical. In law school, people throw out hypotheticals for like, okay, these are the facts. And then you apply a lot of those facts and you argue about it, and it's great fun. I went back and forth on myself if I should do cold calls in this class. I think that'd be really fun. That's a law school thing people do, is like they just like call on you out of the blue and you have to say something. So everybody participate really well, and then I won't have to just call on you out of the blue. But if there's just like moment of silence, then I'm just going to call on the people who have already asked questions and I know have a voice box. Okay, here's the hypothetical. The town of Orderville had a park that was being overrun by vehicles of all types. To make the park a place where residents might find peace and enjoyment, the town leaders enacted a very insightful law that read, "No vehicles in the park." Recently, some disputes have arisen over the interpretation of the law. Please decide the following cases. Okay, this is the law. Has everyone got it? Okay. John lives on one side of the town and works on the other side. He shaves 10 minutes off his commute if he drives through the park. Recently, he has been doing this on a daily basis. Has John violated the law? All right, that's not very exciting. You're right. Anybody? Well, somebody make an argument for me. Why has John violated the law? Let's hear it. Yeah.
In the park, you'd be referring to the green space of the park, not the roads through the park.
Oh, you're making an argument for why he has not violated the law. Okay, yeah, I mean, if a vehicle can go through it, maybe they're talking about like places obviously vehicles should not go. Okay, somebody make an argument for why he has violated the law.
Driving a vehicle in the park.
And it's in the park. It says no vehicles in the park. Okay, got it. Next, to keep the park clean, there are many trash barrels in which people may deposit all litter. Recently, the sanitation department has been entering the park with trash trucks to collect the trash. Has the sanitation department violated the law? Green sweater. Let's hear the argument. Go for it.
The sanitation truck is still a vehicle.
That's a vehicle. I mean, I guess we could talk about the definition of vehicle, but they're in the park. They have a vehicle. Okay, black shirt, sweater. You say no. No violation.
There's always exceptions to any type of law, and typically this includes government employees that still have to do their job somehow. Same with if police cars had also driven through the park.
I'm glad you said that. 2 police officers are in hot pursuit, chasing a suspect bank robber. Wow, suspected bank robber. One officer cuts to the park to get in front of the suspect's car and trap it between the patrol cars. Has the officer violated the law? Somebody make an argument for the officer has violated the law. Yeah.
Well, all we were told was that the law prohibits vehicles from entering the park. Not any of this extra stuff about government workers being allowed on it.
Yeah, true. Laws generally have an exception, but not this law. This law says no vehicles in the park. So, what, are police officers not subject to laws all of a sudden? That'd be crazy. Yes.
Yeah, they're not really.
Oh. Okay. Hot pursuit.
They have violated the law, but there's no, is that morally permissible?
No one's prosecuting them? Is that what you're saying?
Right. In this case, it's kind of like an emergency situation, and so maybe they're government officials, so maybe there should be exceptions for emergencies related to government officials.
Emergency plus government official seems like equals exception to me. Okay.
But are the police officers doing this frequently, just for funsies?
I often wonder that about police officers myself. Yeah, I was speeding, but are you also pulling people over for funsies? I mean, be honest. Just kidding. Okay. Did you raise your hand? I feel like I saw a hand. I could hear your soul wanting to comment on the police officer situation.
I think a lot of laws could have potentially been violated if there was people on the park. There could be negligence or putting people at risk. But it all comes back to what articles or little sub-writing and definitions are.
Right. And in this one, we didn't get any of those, right? So we don't know any of that information. If you're going to be strict about the law, they violated it. Okay. An ambulance has a dying car accident victim and is raced to the hospital. Shortest route to the park. They take the route through the park to reach the hospital. Has the ambulance driver violated the law? Any other insights on this besides? I feel like this is kind of analogous to the police car situation. Are there any other considerations involved in this one that we should take into account in addition to what we already discussed?
I mean, someone's dying. There wasn't anyone actually dying in the car accident.
Yeah. Bank robber, who cares? Someone's dying, forget the law. I guess that's not the question. The question is forget the law. The question is, did they violate the law? Yes.
Car accident victim from the police chase.
Yes. So they trapped him, and then he was dying, and they had to go back the other way. They were unrelated. Okay, several children ride their bikes and skateboards in the park. Have they violated the law? Okay, I'm getting a hand here.
I think bikes are considered to be vehicles, especially when you're on a public road. I don't know about school.
Okay, I'm getting a firm head shake from pink sweater, green cuffs.
I just don't think they're vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is a vehicle? Yes.
I was gonna say, is it a vehicle, are we talking about anything with wheels? That's frequently considered a vehicle, a mode of transport, or is it motorized?
Maddening. I know. It doesn't say motorized. Most of these signs say motorized vehicles. I know, right? You would want that to say that in the law. Okay, any other thoughts on the poor children we're prosecuting?
To me, I feel like we need to do more discovery about this.
Discovery. Great.
This is me trying to use my legal words. But doesn't it matter what the rule of recognition is for how many if everyone is always parking their bikes there, we haven't prosecuted people so far.
Were they on notice? Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that. I want to do this one. Okay, yeah, several of the town citizens for years before this law have made a living taking people on cute little buggy tours. an old-fashioned horse and buggy through the park, and now we pass this law. Are they violating the law if they continue their business? There's some serious reliance interests going on here. Pink sweater, green cuffs.
Again.
You're shaking your head so emphatically. I just can't resist.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's just me being me, but I don't think that like the law can prohibit them. If it comes later.
Seems, even if they're in violation of the law, seems unfair, certainly, as a policy consideration. So anyways, that's basically law school for 3 years, so there you have it. Just kidding, not exactly, but that is like a pretty good litmus test of certainly a part of what law school will feel like. So if you were excited about that, maybe you should be thinking about law school. I don't know. If you have questions though about it or anything else, you can always feel free to reach out to me. I love talking about law school, and if there's anything I can do for you at all, please do just let me know. But thank you so much for having me. I know I'm out of town, out of time. Wow, I can't talk. I'm also no longer able to form sentences. But it's been so fun to be here with you guys, and I really appreciate you having me. So thank you, and let me know if you have any further questions at all.